In Priest, and I think in most bands, when you play Another Thing Coming, you realise everything is made cohesive. What we were feeling when we went in to make Screaming for Vengeance was maybe refocus the attack, refocus the power and the energy, and that's what we did.
By 1982, Judas Priest found themselves facing a difficult task: to top their breakthrough album British Steel and achieve what hasn't been by its successor, Point of Entry. Mainstream attention across the world, including the United States.
Of course, metal was getting really strongly established in the UK and all parts of Europe by the late 70s, early 80s, but in other parts of the world, using the United States as a reference, everybody was warming towards this great new sound, this great new experience. And we often use America as a kind of a template. It's just one part of the world that has been important with metal.
And so in September of 1981, the band packed their gear and flew to Priest's then favorite hangout place on the planet, Spanish Ibiza. During those early sessions, the band quickly knocked out 4 or 5 songs. Yet upon returning to Ibiza Sound studio in January of 1982, after being interrupted by a brief UK tour in November, the band realized they were doing exactly the same mistake they did on the previous record, trying to achieve success by writing the songs they thought their audience wanted.
You never stop learning in this profession, you know. I mean, you always hope to improve your ability as a musician, both in the studio and on stage. It's an ongoing process, you know.
And so in January of 1982, they completely scrapped all of those songs and started the writing process anew. This time KK Downing and Glenn Tipton perfecting each passage, removing any unnecessary notes, and Rob Halford taking the lyrics to an absolutely new level.
For us, you know, following on from Point of Entry, which was an interesting record in that, you know, songs like Turning Circles, You Say Yes, Don't Go. You know, you put those songs against Painkiller. It's like, you know. So I think what we were feeling when we went in to make Screaming for Vengeance was just to maybe refocus the attack, refocus the power and the energy in a more defined way, and that's what we did when we got to Ibiza for the first time.
It seemed like everything was falling in place on Screaming for Vengeance. Despite still partying in Ibiza, the band took their writing job much more responsibly than they did on Point of Entry, which, although was considered a mishit by many fans, still was stronger than most of the heavy metal albums released around that time.
I really like that album, Point of Entry. Some people don't think it's their favourite Priest album, but I suppose because we was on tour with it, I really liked it.
And in addition, the band's lifelong search for a permanent drummer seemed to finally be over, as Dave Holland was going into a recording session for his 3rd album with Judas Priest, thus becoming the longest-lasting drummer the band has had to date. Even though the writing process for Screaming for Vengeance was much longer than usual, Priest came out of it with possibly the strongest and the most coherent album they had by then. And in order to ensure some radio play in the United States, the band's management also invited a popular songwriter, Bob Halligan Jr., to contribute to the track Take These Chains, which, although was released as a single later that same year, hardly got any attention compared to other songs on Screaming for Vengeance, and was actually not performed live up until 3 years ago. recorded most of the album in Ibiza, the band then flew to Florida to mix the record. And ironically, Screaming for Vengeance became the first record in the Judas Priest discography to be mixed in the United States, and it is the same record which just a couple of months later would help Priest to simply explode in America.
Interesting how one track can make so many big things happen. And not just, for Priest, but a lot of bands. It's a one song. That one song becomes incredibly important in the focus of your music, and of course it spread not just from America but around the world. Everybody was drawn towards the reaction to that song.
Very deep in the list of tracks Judas Priest deemed unfit for the album, producer Tom Allen found a raw take of a song the guys thought was too simplistic for the early 80s Judas Priest. The song which would eventually help metal get the mainstream attention it's been fighting for so long.
When they came to us with the suggestion that was the track that they were going to push, we didn't really think it was going to get any traction, because the story goes that we put the bulk of that song together when we were in Bayshore Studios in Criteria Studios in Miami, in Florida. Mm-hmm. And the label said we need another track, and we quickly put that together. And he was buried inside too. We didn't think that much of it, because I think it was such a spontaneous song. The thing with Priest is that we seem to have to spend hours and hours and hours, blood, sweat and tears to get everything out of the song. And that one came together really, really quickly. And I think because it happened that way, maybe our attitude was, well, because it was so instant, maybe it's not going to get the same traction as the title track or Riding on the Wind or Bloodstone. All of these are the really intense Power Attack songs.
When the band re-listened to You've Got Another Thing Coming in Florida, Rob Halford pointed out that it actually would be a perfect drive-in song, which is probably why it has gotten such heavy rotation on the US radio during the drive time hours, as well as enormous attention from MTV, which was established just a year earlier, with a video directed by Julian Temple and filmed at the Campton Park Waterworks, an electrical plant outside of London. Yet, just like with Take These Chains, which the band originally thought would be the main single on this album, the original intention for a main video was for the song Electric Eye, due to the possible visual elements of its lyrics. Yet that one was never made due to the busy touring schedule for Judas Priest that year, which probably is for good, since You've Got Another Thing Coming to this very day remains one of the most heavily rotated metal songs in the history of MTV.
I think it's the simplicity of the song. It's the message. One life, I'm going to live it up. You've got another thing coming. It's a really defiant song. It's a really strong song about self-empowerment, self-belief. Destiny, fighting for what you believe in, and all of these really important human attributes. So, yeah, if you really look into the song, it has so much going for it that kind of went over our heads. I mean, I was writing the lyrics, and the lyrics came pretty quickly as well, as I vaguely recall. But yeah, it's an important track within the big famosity of Screaming for Vengeance.
Among the other 4 tracks which never made it to Screaming for Vengeance was the song Fight for Your Life, which was later on rewritten and got a second life on Defenders of the Faith. Yet to this very day, all the other songs except for Fight for Your Life, which were recorded during the Screaming for Vengeance sessions, remain unreleased, although who knows, maybe one day we will be able to hear some of those on one of the future compilations.
Yeah, I'll never say never with things like that. I mean, occasionally you'll get bonus track from a remix or a reissue.
Or
And
like
so,
one of these ones. Who knows?
Yes,
Maybe
exactly.
for 55.
Exactly. Yeah.
While the media and musical critics were busy applauding Judas Priest for Screaming for Vengeance, the band themselves prepared to embark on an enormous headline tour, which, because of the enormous popularity of Screaming for Vengeance and the hit You've Got Another Thing Coming in the United States, left very little room for the dates in Europe and Asia.
We spend so much time in the States now that it's more or less like home to us. It even seems strange to go back to England now and drive on the other side of the road. Great difficulty now in England, and the roads are too bendy there, you know.
And while the band has toured the United States numerous times before that, this time around the band has found themselves headlining slightly different type of venues.
Everything we did turned to success. It averaged 15,000 people a night, you know. Sometimes it was only 10,000, I'll say only 10,000.
Yet the climax of that headline tour was, of course, the headline show at the Madison Square Garden. A place so legendary that performing in front of 20,000 screaming heavy metal maniacs could easily be a culmination of any band's career.
Just because of what it represents, it's just got this. As soon as you walk into the building, you can feel all of the energy of the great things that have happened before. I'm sure it's the same in Kyiv, you know, when you go into certain places in Kyiv, there's just this feeling, this history, you know. So that's how it was for us, and for musicians there and still now. It's the best feeling in the world, you know. New York City is this incredible town that I've been going to since the late 70s, and there's always a rush when you come into that place. The town and the venue. But I think it was the climax of a lot of things happening that night. It was the focus and the energy of the show, of the tour, all of the great reaction around the record that was really strong for Priest throughout America.
What also made that night at MSG on October 2nd so special, in addition to the fact that it was second to last time Judas Priest would headline Madison Square Garden before being banned for life from that venue, and the fact that a young Scott Ian of Anthrax visited that show and called it a life-changing and shaping experience for him, was the fact that an opening act for that show, as well as several other dates on that tour, was nobody else but another British heavy metal band, Iron Maiden, who then took on the road their now legendary album, Number of the Beast.
It's a thrill because you've got two British metal bands really pushing this movement through that part of the world. And I used to watch Maiden most nights and look and go, man, these guys are going to be huge, you know. Just the songs, the energy on stage, just everything about them just screamed, you know, that they were going to be a massive band. So for us to be working together for some of those dates was remarkable if you had a chance to see it. And yeah, I was in Copenhagen just recently talking to Stephen and about that show, and Nico was there, and you know, both of us are just full of metal memories.
Yet while the show at Madison Square Garden was, of course, a personal highlight for Judas Priest on their headliner tour, the most important Judas Priest concert of 1982-83 period actually happened after the World Vengeance tour officially ended, when Judas Priest received a phone call from Apple's co-founder Steve Wozniak with an invitation to perform on the Heavy Metal Day of the US Festival on May 29, in front of 300,000 people, alongside such acts as Scorpions, Van Halen, and Ozzy Osbourne.
The only way you could get there was by helicopter. You couldn't drive in. You know, I mean, I remember flying over this one hill and just seeing like a different coloured field, and it was people as far as you could see. It's phenomenal.
The album Screaming for Vengeance was received so well by all Judas Priest fans that during the World Vengeance tour the band was forced to play almost every song from this record, rotating them from time to time, with the only exception of two songs which were never played live up until today. The song Pain and Pleasure, a Judas Priest version of a love song, and ironically enough the legendary The Hellion, which although sounded at every venue Judas Priest played on that tour, was never actually performed by the boys live. Vengeance became a pivotal album for heavy metal as a genre, as Judas Priest proved everyone around the world that heavy metal is no longer just a small underground genre which will soon lose its popularity and fade away, and that heavy metal is here to stay. In the way Screaming for Vengeance in the 1980s did exactly the same thing which Metallica's Black Album did in the early 90s, brought heavy metal to mainstream attention, allowing thousands of bands around the globe to spread their wings and produce music of their own, and set much bigger things in motion that could be seen at the first glance.
This is your last chance with a priest, so scream it out!
So today, 40 years from its release, let's celebrate that at some point in history, from a now unknown land and through distant skies, came a winged warrior, and that nothing remained sacred, no one was saved from the Hellion as it uttered its battle cry, screaming for vengeance. So much for watching, guys, and as always, please do not hesitate to comment on anything you heard or saw in this video, and especially if you disagree with me, because the whole point of our Defenders of the Faith series is of course to start a conversation. And also the full version of the interview with Rob Halford about Screaming for Vengeance, touring in 1982, and metal in the 80s will be released in just a couple of days, so don't miss it. Thank you, guys, and we will prevail. Slava Ukraini!